There's actually a lot of situations where I have heard, especially talking to men in the barbershop, where, statistics only say, oh, these fathers aren't present or whatever the case may be. But there's actually a lot of times where I've noticed the woman or the mother of the child is actually the one keeping the father away from the child. It is very important to choose a man that even when you are a burn victim or you do get disabled or you end up in a wheelchair, that man is still going to love you and that I'm going to still love that man regardless of what he goes through. And so when you choose that man, like we said, a man of character in the beginning, I think you have a little bit less to worry about. And especially if he makes God number one, he has some sort of respect, discipline, and self-control instilled in him. And that's the biggest thing I can rely on.
Imagine having direct access to someone who's navigated life's toughest terrains and come out stronger. Someone who's been there, done that, and can guide you with empathy, experience, and honesty. This isn't just advice. It's a lifeline, a strategy session, a chance to learn from my journey so you can accelerate yours. Without the ability to be self-aware and introspective, the ability for you to get to where you want to go, nearly impossible.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the David Guttman podcast. I have a really, really interesting guest today, Sapphire. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to delve just a little bit into your background, and then actually I should mention, yesterday was, I did a podcast with the youngest person I'd ever done a podcast with until today. Now you're the youngest person I've ever done a podcast with.
I'm honored.
I know, so the record lasted exactly one day, but this probably will be the youngest I go. But when I was watching a bunch of your content, I was really taken by how thoughtful and insightful a lot of your content was around dating and relationships. It's a topic that I think is a blind spot for most of humanity, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So a topic that I don't think people talk about enough, and I don't think they understand enough. But I thought it might be useful maybe just to talk a little bit about your background, just so, I can understand, and maybe the listeners can understand the lens you see the world through. So as I understand it, like, you basically have been on your own since you were like 14 or 15, right? Can you talk a little bit about how that all came to be?
Yeah, it was, I was out of my house due to protective order from a family member. And I was, kind of just experiencing the world, as I found out very quickly was not nice to people. Doesn't matter who you are, how you came to, the time frame that you were brought up there, but the world is not kind to anyone. It will always try to take advantage and all of these things. And I learned as time allowed me to either make the decision of whether to let that break you down or build you up. And I think about 15, 16, my first or second year of high school, I experienced going to the barbershop. That's when I kind of opened my eyes to the male mentality, a lot of the burdens that a lot of males go through, because as a lot of men know, the barbershop is the venting session of like everything. So being the one woman that had the opportunity and the advantage of just sitting down and listening, you learn how to be quiet, not use your mouth and use your ears. And I think that's kind of why I'm here today.
So first of all, how did you end up at the barbershop? Were you working at the barbershop? Were you living with someone who ran a barbershop? Like, how did that?
Yeah, I was with some classmates. It was walking distance from my school, a few streets down, and some of my classmates, I had the girls and the guys with me. It was like a group of us. And one of the guys went to go get a haircut. The other one went to the salon, the nail salon. They were right beside each other. And I decided to go to the barbershop. I sat down, I was doing my homework, and they were just kind of talking to me about like, oh, kids don't do their homework enough, da-da-da-da-da. And then he kind of just was like, hey, I'm going to start keeping you accountable for your homework because I want to make sure, you seem like a pretty beautiful girl. You seem smart. So keep doing what you're doing. And so I come back the next day, and then the next day, and the next day. And I think because I was alone for so long, that gave me a sense of security. It gave me a sense of like a man presence that I believe I needed, that I didn't know that I needed.
Mm-hmm.
And it prepared me for the world a little bit more than I would like to admit.
Well, so maybe tell me about some of the biggest lessons you got from that barbershop.
That's a good question. I think one of the biggest lessons I got from the barbershop was how to think more like a man and cater to a man as a woman. Because you can know everything. The you can know you're right sometimes. And it's okay to let the men figure it out or let the men just have it sometimes, you know?
Right.
I think the ability to cater to a man is so important because that is part of the thing that builds him. I think I think one of the better lessons I can actually say is that a lot of women believe that submission and femininity is thinking that you're under him or that you lose your power when femininity and submission is actually how you get everything you want.
Right.
And a lot of women will never understand that because they think it's weak. They think
Mhm.
it's something that, oh, you have the one up on me. But no, because when a man gets that respect, when he gets that admiration, that adoration, he will give you the world.
Right.
And that's when I was like, okay, because I see too many people talk, like they just talk, talk, talk. And I used to be one of those women too. I even in the barbershop, I had the absolute audacity to sit up out of the chair and say, well, I don't think all women think like this.
Right.
And the guys just looked at me and they were like, oh, no, not here. Definitely not here. Sit your ass down. You going to listen. And that's when I learned the power of sometimes you need to let a man talk. Just let him talk.
Mm.
One thing I've learned is, sometimes we need to give a 15 to 30-second break after you finish, just to see if you have anything else left to say.
Mm.
Because sometimes a man just needs that time to get everything out. He has what he wants to say, but the way his brain works is not like women. Sometimes
Right.
you just need to give him time.
Right.
And yeah, I will definitely say sometimes I still struggle with it. Because if I feel in my heart of hearts, I'm like, no, like this is how it's supposed to be. That's where patience comes in. That's where understanding comes in. That's where teamwork comes in. I need to know that women and men do not think the same.
I got so many questions.
Yeah.
Let me start with one that I think will be. I'm really interested to hear your answer. My opinion is I have never met a woman who, if she's honest, maybe get a drink or two in her, you ask her, "Are you interested in sharing your life with a guy that you're smarter than or more successful than?" I've never met a woman that would prefer to be with a guy she's smarter than or prefer to be with a guy that she's more successful than. What's your opinion about that? Like, I've never heard a woman brag about the garbage man she's dating or the grammar school teacher she's dating that's making 60 grand. Like, I've never heard that.
Yeah. I think it comes with character. I think there's a difference between a high value man in a successful worldly standpoint and a man that is of high value character. I would rather trade in any of the worldly and materialistic things for a man of high value character. And sometimes that comes with getting your hands dirty. That's the most honest answer that I could give you because I have met men that are, in the industry, being a model, just looking at a lot of people with all this money and status and these girls and all of these things. And a lot of women are attracted to those kind of men, but who is he like inside? Am I able to come to him with full vulnerability and know that he's going to take care of me, not just my body, but my soul? I think that is what I crave, like truly what I crave. Someone who's going to be a good father to my children, who I don't have to worry about my daughter or son having daddy issues.
Right.
Things like that is really, really like detrimental to the foundation of my family because my main goal as a future or as a prior parent, looking for the options of my future children, I have to understand it's not about me. It's about my kids and their kids. So just understanding that sometimes what glitters is not all gold.
Right. But you didn't answer my question.
Let me go back
Well,
and
and
answer.
actually, let me say this too, because I remember from one of the podcasts I watched that you wanted to have some large number of children. I don't know, 5, 6, 7. I forget
want
exactly
like
the
7
number.
children.
Yeah. So you are not going to be able to be with a guy who's not making a very good income and be able to properly support 7 children.
Well, I could debate with you on that.
Okay.
I could debate only because of what I'm doing now.
Mm-hmm.
I have started at a very young age to invest in the things that I do, the assets and not the liabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it comes to the things that I am investing in, I want to be able to get land. I want to be able to do all of this and do all of that so that when I do unify with my future husband, I'm able to say, this is what I built in the time that I was waiting for you.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we're unified, I can give you my empire and you can just build off of that as well, whatever you have.
Okay.
And I started at a really young age, like from the time that I started cutting hair, just hustling all over. When it comes to smarter and you said more successful, I think for me, he's going to be the breadwinner regardless if I have more money or not, because he's going to be the head of the household.
Okay.
He's going to be the one that is going to be making the end all be all decision. I'm just going to have to trust that. And for me to say, oh, I want to make this amount of income, and then rather find a man with more income, but I have to also substitute some of the income with less character, I would not want that. But I also understand that men get intimidated when a woman makes more than them.
That's right.
So is definitely a battle within myself that I'm going to have to pray about.
Right.
Something that I'm going to have to really like ponder, because I can only say something, but when it actually comes into fruition, when I do make that amount, it is probably going to be really hard.
Because I remember seeing a statistic. It was something like if the woman was the primary earner in a relationship, the guy was like 300% more likely to be unfaithful. Because for a lot of men, most men, part of how they validate themselves, especially in a romantic relationship, is by being the provider.
Yeah.
And that if they're unable to do so, it makes it harder. The other stat I saw was women with, I think, a master's degree or higher, they're, I think something like, there's a better, if you're a woman and you have a PhD, there's a better chance you'll be struck by lightning than get married. I'm exaggerating slightly, but it's very uncommon because again, and even this situation, because look, what the part you're saying that I completely agree with is it can never be without character, right? If you don't have a man of character, the money won't matter. So that part I'm in complete agreement with you about. But ultimately, a high value woman, I would think, would want both.
Yeah.
I mean, in a perfect world, right? Wouldn't that be your preference, or would you say no?
100%. It would definitely be my preference. Because you always want the best that you can get.
Sure.
Right. But I don't want to fall too high among the delusional stage where I'm just like, all right, like that's like, the 1% that people, and a lot of the worldly 1%, they don't have character.
Yeah.
Not even the 10, sometimes 20%.
Yeah.
Those are so money hungry. But it's also, this is where it gets a little complicated because I value your time and your touch more than I do your money.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be held by you. I want to be, comforted. And I'm going to get frustrated if I never see you and you're always out there making money. I would much rather, get some land and invest in something that's going to be bringing something to the home rather than you having to go out there and work for it all the time. Yeah. And that's why I would rather just do the work now and just be like, listen, baby, I know you've been fighting for your life. You can chill for just a little bit, let's make some babies. let's do this. Let's get some assets.
So I would think that you'd probably be better suited to a guy who is older versus a guy closer to your age. Would you say that's fair?
I would say that's probably fair. Yeah.
And do you think you'd prefer a guy who's older who maybe had, got married, has kids from a previous relationship, or you're looking for a guy who's older, who's never been married, no kids?
Well, I've never really been with someone who's like older,
Okay.
because attraction is also a big thing for me. I
Sure.
want to be attracted to you. You have to take care of your body and be healthy and stuff like that. But wait, how much older are we talking?
I mean, to each his own, right?
That is true.
I mean, I told you, like, when I met my wife, she was 23, I was 50.
How was that for you?
I mean, it's funny because people mistakenly thought, oh, you just want to be with someone younger because they're better looking. And well, on average, that might be true. I dated people that were 23, 33, 43. It's like, it wasn't about that. My experience was women that were younger had less baggage and had less. Most of the women I met in their 40s and plus, and above, they didn't like men very much. Very cynical, very jaded.
Was it
And
like
again,
a resentment kind of?
yeah, it's like, you've had enough failed relationships. You've had enough guys maybe not be very good to you. And you're going to start to think more like, oh, all guys are that way. Right.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like it's a very frustrating thing, I think, for anyone in a relationship where um, you want to be evaluated for your behavior, not the behavior of people that came before you.
Yeah.
Right. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, hey, other guys, lied, so therefore you're a liar. Other guys cheated, so therefore you're a cheater. And it's like, you want to be evaluated as an individual, not based on. And again, I just think that's a little bit easier. But for me, honestly, the only real issue was she had so little. She never actually had a boyfriend before. She'd had hookups, but she never had a boyfriend before. And so the challenge was that she was new at understanding how to be a good communicator, and she didn't really know how to sort of be a partner in a relationship. And she eventually figured it out. And then things were great.
How how long did it, or I guess was it frustrating for you because you've already, kind of vetted out women and stuff like that? How how was the experience like for you being with somebody who hasn't gone through anything relationship wise?
Um, she's very smart and a very quick study and very open minded. So it actually wasn't bad at all. And one of the things that's and look, because I had so much relationship experience, ironically, the one of the biggest challenges was she didn't understand how unique and unusual our relationship was because she hadn't had past relationships. So like she would talk to her mom would be like you guys never like utter an unkind word to each other. Like that's not normal. That people are together for years and never raise their voice, never yell at each other, never say mean shit. Like we've been together almost 9 years and we have never uttered an unkind word to each other.
Would you say that is healthy? Because some people say you need to disagree and argue.
We disagree.
Okay, for
We
sure.
just always fight fair.
Oh,
So when we
that's
have we have
amazing.
disagreements,
Yeah.
right? And I think that most problems in most relationships come down to the fact that people leave questions unasked and things unsaid. That if you simply are clear about what your needs are and those are reasonable, most reasonable people, and you want to be in a relationship with a reasonable person, most reasonable people are like, oh, yeah, that seems perfectly reasonable.
Yeah. So do you believe in the saying like don't go to bed mad with your spouse?
Um, I, I never have. I do think it's a bad idea to go to sleep angry. I don't think it's the end of the world,
Yeah.
but I think if you can clear the air before you go to bed, that's probably good.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
And
healthy.
have you had relationships before?
I've
Was-
been in 2 relationships.
And how long were those?
Well, my first relationship lasted most of my childhood. It was
Okay.
like I grew up with him in the church,
Okay.
and it ended when I was around 17.
Okay.
He was a little bit older than me.
Yeah.
But I think since my parents both knew each other, it was kind of just like, you guys like each other. It's kind of, we were
Right.
blushing, holding hands and stuff. My second one lasted for about 3 years.
Okay.
So,
Well, I'm doing the math. So you're only 21, right?
mhm. Yeah, I
So-
ended it like last year.
Okay. So you basically went from the one relationship all the way till you were 17, and then from that one to the one that lasted 3 years, basically, right?
Yep.
Okay. And why did that relationship end, if you don't mind me asking?
It was a lot of potential just being potential.
Mhm.
I believe that the lack of there was a lot of lack of understanding. And I think because I was young and he was a little bit I think because we met before I started everything, this whole
Mhm.
podcast and modeling and things like that. And I noticed a lot of arguments happen whenever, I would have to go somewhere for an event or I would have to do this and do that. And it created a lot of tension in the relationship. Kind
Mhm.
of goes to what we were being said about, how much um, the tension is when the man sees that the woman might be doing other things.
Right.
Um, and there was really no amount of reassurance that I could really give him because it was he was struggling a little bit.
Yeah.
But I really, really loved him.
Mm.
I really loved him, but I realized it wasn't healthy. I started losing weight.
Yeah.
It just didn't feel very godly.
Yeah.
And it just turned into kind of a disaster, which I felt like I had to disassociate myself from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's hard. I mean, what I would say, like, so, my wife's very attractive. She's much younger than me. Fortunately, I'm incapable of feeling jealous.
Hmm.
Like, I can't, I mean, and it hasn't always been that way. That's something I came to later in life. And it might sound odd, but I came to it in a purely intellectual way. Um, in my relationship, I use the term outcome independent. I'm completely outcome independent. I love my wife. I would kill for my wife. I would do anything to protect her, provide for her. But if I came home from this podcast and she said, I've been thinking about it and I decided I, want to be with somebody else or I don't want to be with you. Um, no one believes me, but I'd be like, I love this person. I want this person to be happy. And if being with someone other than me made her happier, then that's what I would want her to do.
Yeah.
Because the alternative doesn't even make sense to me. The alternative is, okay, you know what, Dave, you've been such a wonderful husband and boyfriend before that. Even though I don't want to be with you, I'll stick with you anyway out of loyalty. I'm like, don't do me any favors. Like the number one criteria in a partner is they have to want to be with you. And if that's not true, nothing else really matters. And so when you think about it that way, jealousy doesn't even make sense.
Mm.
And I would argue that that's part of why she's so interested in me is that she understands that and I told her when we started dating, I want you to be with me no longer than you want to be with me. And it'll be for as long as you want.
Okay. Yeah. I say I say a little bit of jealousy is okay though.
Yeah.
I think as long as it's not acted in a negative stance,
Right.
I think it can also be kind of symbolic to me just really caring about you. Just like I always used to say, listen, if God can be a jealous God, I can be a jealous woman. I'm
Right.
just not going to act negatively on it, but the feelings are going to be there. Like, that's mine for sure.
So my wife is very jealous.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, she's looking at your Instagram. She's like, oh, she's kind of pretty. You think she's pretty? I'm like, yeah, I think she's pretty. Like, it's funny because I'm not jealous and I find it all humorous. What I will say about that is I understand the point of view, but, and I'll say this, I didn't, until this relationship, I didn't think I could be really excited by someone and also feel safe at the same time.
That's amazing.
Turns out that you can. I literally did not think that you could have both of those things in equal parts, but it turns out you can. And it's about how you frame it.
Yeah. So I have a question then.
Sure.
How or what is the point in a relationship where you guys should fully commit and cut all ties off with everybody else or anybody that wants to entertain you? Or is it the dating phase, the talking phase, the engagement phase? What do you think?
I think it depends a lot on the circumstances and the personalities of the people. I think that, I mean, we were kind of that way from the jump.
Okay.
But I think that because my point of view was, look, I mean, she was 23, right?
Yeah.
I was like, you haven't really experienced life. My perspective, and this will sound crazy, was, hey, look, I'm even okay if you wanted to see someone else, just because I don't want you to then, like, if we're going to be together long term, I don't want you to then oh, I spent my best years with you and now we're not together anymore. And, and then she resents me for that. And so, fairly early in our relationship, even though we almost never acted on it, we had an open relationship so that if she wanted to, she could and not feel guilty. If I wanted to, I could and not feel guilty. And again, rarely ever acted on it. But the fact that we could actually, I think actually helped the relationship quite a bit. The other thing I'll say about it is we have zero secrets from each other. And that's been true from day one. I mean, I could go through, I never would. I could go through her phone. She could go through my phone. It doesn't matter. Email, Instagram, anything. Um, and it's also the first time I've ever had a relationship like that, where in both directions, we were 100% honest about everything from the beginning. And it makes it so much easier because you don't have to remember what you said because you just said the truth.
Yeah. That's really good.
So, well, I'm curious on your perspective now. So you've had two fairly long-term relationships, especially for someone as young as you, and your perspective on sort of what I would say, in many respects, more traditional gender roles. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah.
To characterize it?
I would say the first one more than the second one.
Well, I mean, now the way you think about your
yeah.
future relationship is, the part that's a little bit different is seems like you'd be okay being, if not the primary, certainly a significant financial contributor to the relationship.
Yeah.
My experience has been that there's two kinds of relationships I see that are successful, where the couple, husband and wife, are in business together, like an Alex Hormozy and Layla Hormozy or something like that, or a relationship more like me and my wife, where she's simply a force multiplier for me. Her job is to basically make me as productive as I can be. Yeah. And so it's interesting because it wasn't always like that. There was a period of time where she was making a lot of money as a personal trainer, doing meal prep for executives, making six figures, and she was miserable. And I was like, why are you doing this? Like, you're not happy. You're stressed out all the time. The money you're making doesn't change your lifestyle. Yeah. And she's like, well, and she was getting a lot of positive reinforcement from her family. Like, oh, we're so proud of you. And da-da-da. And I'm like, who are you living for? You or your family? So I gave her a reframe. I said, because she was embarrassed if she wasn't working, people asked, what do you do? I don't do anything. I'm like, well, when
that's a flex for me.
I was going to say, that's what I said. I said, when people ask you what you do, say, I'm retired. Who doesn't want to be 30 and be retired? That's what everyone's out there doing the grind for. Yeah. You're already there. So once she reframed it, she's good.
Yeah.
So tell me, kind of how you think about how you might find your next romantic partner and what that journey might look like.
Well, I will definitely say it is all in God's timing. I don't want to rush anything that I'm not ready for or that I'm not prepared to be in, because I don't want to spend too long, because I want so many kids. I don't want to spend too long just like going relationship after relationship. Right. So I'm okay with saying no until I get to that yes, because it only takes one yes to get to that right person. But when it comes to the kind of relationship where you're talking about earlier, I'm also okay with building with my person. I know that as a woman, I can also open doors that he probably can't. I know that I can, I'm very invested in the stock market right now. And even if he didn't know, I'm very, very willing to teach him. Right. I would be so glad if he had the open-mindedness to learn if he didn't know already. And in that way, he could make more than me. I will fully invest in that, because if that's what makes you feel safe, let's do it. Let's get some online courses together on how to buy land, on how to do real estate, on how to do this or do that. As long as you're good, I'm good. And I think that's my goal. So,
well, something you said earlier, and then something I heard in one of the podcasts that I saw of yours. I think you don't differentiate so much between persuasion and manipulation, because I think about those as very different. Okay. And again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I thought I heard was, manipulation's not so bad. Or maybe the guy, maybe having the guy think you think more of him than you do. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it struck me like maybe a little manipulation isn't so bad. And I'm just curious, but again, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah. So what the clip originally was clickbait. So
Okay.
if people really looked at the clip, it was basically him asking me if I ever use pretty privilege, I think.
Yeah. That's the
Um,
one.
and I said, yeah, I have. But it is all about intention now, right? When you do know better and you can do better. What my thing is with manipulation, if you Google the term manipulation, it's a neutral term. It's not negative and it's not positive. It's directing an emotion or a feeling somewhere, you know. And I think manipulation used in a negative term on the flip side can also be discipleship on a good term. So, say for example, if a man approaches me, he says, "Oh, you're beautiful. I want to pursue you," all that stuff. And I say, "Well, sir, I really appreciate that. 100%. Um, I really want a man that is engulfed by God." "Oh, well, you're like a light of the world. I want to know how to pursue you, da da da." It's all through Jesus.
Right.
I turn my tests into testimonies. And in that process, I've witnessed from my own experiences, men have turned to the Bible. And it may have been with the first intent of, oh, like, I want to see what she got. Like, I want to know how people don't just lust over her, but respect her. Give her more time and effort than these girls that are out here just flaunting everything. And when you see how you can like really just be that kind of woman that people ask questions about, why is she smiling? Why is she, how does she get the things she wants without giving it up or without doing this or doing that? Is God. And that sparks someone's interest. They say you only need they only need faith of a mustard seed. And sometimes when God gives you that gift of beauty, you can plant those seeds in somebody else just by being, who he calls you to be.
Okay. So that kind of sounds like the ends justify the means, sort of.
Yeah, just as long as you don't manipulate anybody for your own intent, for selfish desire, or for something that I'm going to benefit off of that does not represent God.
Okay.
Yes.
I get that. No, okay. I could appreciate that. Because the way I usually differentiate between persuasion and manipulation, and maybe this isn't technically the right definition, but I think about manipulation as being trying to get you to do something, and this would not be true in what you were talking about, trying to get someone to do something against their interests. And persuasion is trying to get someone to do something in their interest.
Okay.
But what you're talking about clearly would be persuasion, because if you're trying to get them to be more godly, that's not against their interest.
Yeah. So maybe I used the term wrong.
I might have to. Yeah.
Yeah. But I always gave like somebody the example when because there were actually several people who called me about that, and I was like, well, I have some questions, and I was just kind of like, okay, here's an example, right? Like parents see that a kid failed on their test or something, and they say, well, I'm gonna reward you with movie night or something if you score better on the next test. That's a form of manipulation.
Or bribery.
Or bribery. You're right.
Which, hey, but hey, at least you're being transparent about it,
yeah,
right?
But it's like, I just want to steer people in the right direction.
Sure.
So with whatever I do, whatever I say, I want to do all for the glory of God.
So have you been religious your entire life, or at what age did you become religious?
I definitely tested God for sure.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I've always been one of those kids when I was younger. And I'm still young, but when I was younger, people always used to tell me like, yeah, you just think that you can get away with everything.
Right.
Like I was good at getting away with everything too. And eventually I learned that I have to be responsible and accountable for my actions. Because during the time that I wasn't, I was alone. And I asked God, I was like, what is it like without you? And he took his hand off me for a little bit. That's when I was, on my own. I was homeless for a little bit. I was living in my car. I was smoking weed. I was doing all of these things, hanging out with the wrong people, doing drug runs for some of the other barbers. It was crazy. But in that time frame, I learned that's not gonna get me anywhere.
Right.
Yeah, it's not at all. And so I I had to tighten up for sure.
Mm. Was there a particular turning point for you, a particular event or something that happened? You're like, okay, I gotta wake the fuck up.
Yeah, I think it was a gradual thing.
Yeah.
I think it was the more I fell out of my relationship and out of the light, I just kind of found myself getting into more predicaments where I had to call out for help or I had to realize that I bit more than I could chew.
Mm.
Things like that I wasn't careful with, you know. I was house hopping a lot at the time
Right.
and I ended up getting into some homes that I was not safe in at all.
Mm.
It's crazy, crazy people are on this earth.
Right.
And people are definitely there's a lot of people here to manipulate and try to take advantage. But I didn't want to just keep getting over it and healing, you know, the healing process has to keep,
Sure.
starting over. So I'm just like, maybe if I just make better decisions from the
Mm.
beginning, then the turnout will be better, you know? You don't have to go through certain things to experience the better sides of things. Sometimes you just make the right decision.
Well, so do you still have a relationship with your parents?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah,
So
after the
talk about that a
protective
little bit.
order. Yeah,
Yeah.
after the protective order ended, you know, I reached out to them. We went to it was one family therapy session, but it was needed. I think
Mm.
because both of my parents are from a foreign country, different from South Africa and Malaysia. You know, there's a lot of foreign parents like are not really
Right.
with therapy and stuff like that. But in that time frame, the therapist said one thing that I was really glad that they said. They were like, you know, you have to understand that your child, the one that you guys kind of caused to break, is trying to bring you guys to fix what you broke.
Mm.
And children don't do that.
Right.
And so for me to sit here and look at my parents, realize that was amazing. And it was, I think, the beginning of us being able to rebuild or build what was not there.
Mm.
Um, Ever since then, we've been locked in, you know. Um,
And they're still
and
together? Your
yeah,
parents are together?
yeah, they're
Okay.
together. They
Mm.
live together. But I really came to realize that I don't think and believe that I'm going to be able to give my future children and husband the love and the care that they deserve if I don't fix the family I have now.
Mm.
It all starts with, you know, with what you do right now. And so in the process of preparing for my future family, I need to fix whatever I got going on.
Right. Who's been your biggest, I mean, especially at any age, but especially as young as you are, you're very articulate, you're clearly very intelligent.
Thank you.
Did you have a role model? Who was your mentor, or how did you, or is it all just you and
Yeah.
maybe the hand of God?
It was definitely God. I think whenever I try to put anybody on a pedestal or look up to anybody, they always have let me down. And it was usually some sort of male figure that I
Mm-hmm.
always try to look up to. And it was always like, oh, well, you're a little bit older now, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it was always a letdown. Um, but I will say he put certain people in place of my life where they were able to discipline me or they were able to, you know, do something that I maybe didn't like but I needed, you know, because there was a time and point where, you know, in I think it was like 8th grade or freshman year that I was trying to like steal or I was trying to, you know, do this and do that. But I wasn't doing it because I needed it. I was doing it because I wanted someone to discipline me.
Mm.
And so when I thought that I was going to get certain consequences, one of the man that baptized me, he came up to the house that I was staying at and he was just like sat me down and you know, he really talked to me. And there was two ways that I could have gone after that. I could have, well, you didn't, you know, there was no real consequences. You're not going to call anyone or whatever. So I'm just going to keep doing it. Or I could take that talk and be like, okay, you're right. There's no real reason why I'm doing this.
Mm.
I'm taking things that I don't even need,
Mm.
and other people need it and stuff like that. But that was love. And I think that was the love that I was looking for. Just someone that was like, I see you. It's going to be okay. And as a child, I was lacking that a little bit, but when I found that, I was a lot better.
So you said something earlier, and again, I'm paraphrasing, but you almost made it sound like the world's a dangerous place. You always got to be on the lookout.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I don't see the world that way.
Mm.
And again, so I guess I would say to you, and don't get me wrong, there's people that are dangerous,
Yeah.
right? Absolutely. And there are other people that aren't.
Of course.
I mean, like, you're not dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Are you?
I hope not. I feel like everybody could be dangerous sometimes.
Well, I think Jordan Peterson said something around someone who's not dangerous, who's not violent. That's not saying much. It's the person who could be violent. That's
Probably
not.
the
That's
biggest-
the person.
biggest
That's the person with
danger.
strength, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I see that if the lens you look at the world through is one of scarcity or fear or danger, that it can hold you back, I think.
I agree with you. That's why people have actually known me to be quite gullible, quite arrogant sometimes to people's actions, because they've always told me, you trust too much, or you just give everyone that opportunity and that room to hurt you.
Right.
And I'm okay with being broken by people if they choose to do that, because I also know that my strength doesn't come from them. There's been multiple times, and I don't think I would have been able to meet the people that I've met or to get the help and trust that I have from certain people if I wasn't able to lean on them.
Right.
I think trying to do everything yourself is what mistake a lot of people make, when community is everything. When being able to give people the room to be trusted, even when they haven't gone through those tests and seasons, is important. So I completely agree with you. If you're always on the lookout, then you're probably going to miss a lot of blessings.
Right.
And that's where I kind of come to, like, okay, maybe I just need a strong man to like tell me when I'm tripping or not, because I could just be like la-di-da-di-da
Right.
when I just sometimes like, this person, I know this person did something bad to me, but this person, nah, they're probably good.
So I don't know if you watch TED Talks or any of those, but so there's my all-time favorite one is called The Power of Vulnerability, and it's by this woman, Brene Brown, and I'll send it to you. I think you'd really like it. But she talks about vulnerability not just being important, but actually being a superpower. But people mistakenly think of vulnerability as being weak, and I think vulnerability is just being authentic.
Yeah.
Right. And so, because I feel like, and a couple of things. One, my experience is when I'm vulnerable and authentic, most people, at least that are mentally healthy, are vulnerable and authentic in return, for the most part.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, people that are not, you probably should be a little wary of. Because I know, and again, I was watching some of your content, and and when you were interviewing other people, you'd ask them, well, what do you look for, and kind of how do you test whether people are sincere, especially some of the celebrities that you interviewed. How do you know they really want you for you? And I think that that's true for any high value man, right? Especially for a celebrity, but for any high value man, how do you know that someone really wants you for you? And so I'm curious how you think about that, both from the man's perspective and from the woman's perspective.
I think I'll start from the woman's. I think it's the time, the effort, and the seasoning. Just wait. Sometimes time is really the true test. Sometimes you just have to wait and see the creativeness. If you don't have the finance, if you don't have something, there's so many things that people can do to show that they care about you. There's picnics, there's walks in the park, there's, just you don't gotta buy flowers, pick flowers. there's just so many things that just like show effort. And from the man's perspective, if you're worried about a woman that you think might take advantage of you because you have this certain kind of name or, assets and things like this, I think the biggest thing is, first of all, there's a lot of people who have trauma, like,
Right.
and stuff. So if you really feel like that person is out there, first you need to see the way that they present themselves,
Right.
see how they carry themselves, what they talk about, uh, what they say about people that they don't like. Things like that is all very important. Just the
Sure.
observation. Don't fall in love with your eyes. And a lot of men do that. They try to go for someone they find hyper attractive. Don't just do that, See what they ask questions. If you give a woman time to talk, she's going to tell you everything.
I completely agree with you.
um, and so, I would definitely start out with just small things. Like, what do you think about just me, going on a picnic and stuff like that? A picnic will require so much more effort than taking someone out to a dinner.
Sure.
So much more effort because you actually gotta like find a little park. You gotta
Right.
put the blanket down. You gotta be the server.
Right.
I think things like that is much more romantic to me
Mm.
because now we get to talk and spend time. There's no bill or anything that comes after. It's you and me, and we don't gotta go nowhere. Like, can you sit down and actually, can you deal with can you deal with me for a long period of time, or are you gonna get
Right.
tired and quiet?
Right.
You ready to go? Like,
Right.
no. I want you to actually enjoy spending time with me, laugh with me.
Right.
Things like that I think will help. And not having sex, like, that's a big blinder that
For
people
sure.
have. Yeah. Um it's something that a lot of people overlook because they're just like, oh, well, they're attractive, or it's just one time, or whatever the case. It's not really as much as this as you talk about. So like, I'm always like, bro, like, yeah, you don't even understand what sex, that bond, does to you.
Right.
And you can't properly, the way that you want and need, vet out that person when you guys are doing the do.
Right.
You can't do it.
Yeah. I think that part of it, and let's be honest, right? If you were a burn victim, there'd be a lot less guys interested in you. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, a burn victim?
Yeah, like if you were like horribly disfigured from
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
100%.
right, yeah.
100%.
And so, guys are going to be interested in you because you're attractive in the same way that a guy who's very successful, women are going to be interested in him, at least in part,
Yeah.
because he's successful. And again, my argument would be the vast majority of women want to be with a guy who's successful, not necessarily just because of the money, though that's not irrelevant, but the kind of guy who's successful is ambitious, he's determined, he's disciplined. There's a whole bunch of other characteristics come
100%.
along with that, right? And the way I think about it, and my thinking on this has definitely evolved over the years for sure, is healthy relationships of any kind, not just romantic relationships, business relationships, friendships, even family relationships. All relationships are transactional, but what are you transacting? You can transact empathy. You can transact understanding. You can transact money. You can transact lifestyle. You can transact sex. There's all kinds of things you can transact. My experience is that the broader the set of things you transact, the better.
Yeah.
That if part of the reason my wife wasn't interested in me, I declared bankruptcy 4 or 5 months after we met. So if she's a gold digger, she's really stupid, right? But she absolutely wants to be with a guy who's successful, and she believed I'd be successful again, which I am. And and the same thing, like if she were 300 pounds, we wouldn't be together, right? Now, I tell her, and she probably half believes me. I'm like, your looks are the easiest part of you to replace. That I could replace like that. Your open-mindedness, your intellect, the fact that you're willing to be, a force multiplier for me and have more traditional gender roles. Those are, my wife busts my balls exactly zero. Zero. We've been together 9 years,
Yeah.
not once. Like if I'm working late, I said I'd be home at 7. It's 9 o'clock. She's not blowing me up. Where are you? You said you'd be home 2 hours ago. She's like, I'm so sorry you're having to work late. Would you like me to bring some food by? Would you like me to send some Uber Eats? Like, what can I do to make your life better? Would you like a hot oil massage in the bath ready when you get home?
That's
Right.
amazing.
And so that to me is, hey, be a force multiplier for me. I can't wait to get home to that person. The person who's busting my balls, maybe I need to work a couple more hours, you know?
Yeah, and it really amazes me to think how many things and ways there are to show intimacy and affection without even touching someone.
Right.
There's so many ways. There's a multitude of things that we can do that we don't think about just because we lack creativity.
Well, so I really am really curious about your opinion about this, because my experience is the one place successful men have the biggest blind spot by miles is in their romantic relationships.
How so?
Say that again?
How so?
Well, I think if you look at most successful men, the biggest mistakes they generally make are in who they choose for their romantic partner.
Yeah, that makes
Um,
sense.
and I think it's kind of what you were saying before. They get, ironically, blinded by their eyes.
Yeah, hyper
And
attraction.
yeah, and ultimately, I do think it's the hardest part about waiting for sex, to your point, is I think for a relationship to stand the test of time, you have to have really strong attraction.
Yeah.
And so you want this combination of, hey, I have really strong attraction, but I'm also okay waiting.
Yeah.
That's a tough combo for most people.
Yeah, it is. It is tough, and I think the problem with a lot of people as well is that, or I guess those high value men, is that when they're very they get approached a lot by a lot more women because of their status and success, especially attractive men at that. And when that happens, it it's very interesting that a lot of the women that they probably do need in their lives are not the ones in front of the camera or flaunting themselves at those men.
Right.
And so that's why a lot of the, more successful and high status men, they end up choosing someone that is in front of them, or someone that, they're chasing because they're hyper attracted to them.
Right.
But the women that are usually the ones that are worth keeping are the ones that are not necessarily in front of the camera all of the time. They're reading a book. They're playing chess. They're making a meal. They're doing something that,
Right.
or they're hustling. They're doing something, behind the scenes sometimes. They don't always want to be seen. The woman that always wants to be seen probably wants to be seen by a whole lot of other people.
Right. Well, so in your journey, looking for the relationship you're looking for, are you waiting for the guy to find you, or are you trying to find him?
I think there's so many possibilities. I'm like a hopeless romantic in here. Like I feel like it could be I trip on you and accidentally spill something on your shirt, or we're at the library, or I'm playing chess and you peep over my phone. You're like, oh, you play chess? Like, yeah. Match me for my number. Things like that. Or I could be racing. You could just like, let's go. I think there's so many different possibilities that I could meet somebody.
You should be writing rom-coms.
Right? But I don't think there's a specific way.
Yeah.
However, when it comes to the pursuit, I do want a man to pursue me, because knowing that a man is initially attracted to me is important.
Sure.
I don't want to be the pursuer, because I'm gonna feel a little bit like I got the pants on. But if they are the man that's pursuing me, I'm definitely gonna pursue them back in a more feminine way. There's a lot of ways where I could show that I'm interested.
Sure.
And you still be the pursuer.
Right. So one of the things I think that's the most challenging for long-term relationships, marriages, obviously, especially when there's children, and especially when there's a lot of children, is it is very, very difficult. And I think people grossly underestimate how hard it is to keep that romantic spark in a relationship with a couple of kids, let alone 7.
I bet.
What that does to your body, what that does to your physical attraction, things like that. How do you think about that? And do you think about Does that worry you when you think about long-term relationships?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it scares me sometimes.
Yeah.
When people ask me one of my biggest fears, I will say choosing the wrong man or choosing a man that will not have the self-control or the discipline to maintain that throughout the relationship. Because I already know how a lot of women might go through certain things, and just the hormone fluctuation in
Sure.
their body might just change them. The only thing that I could really rely on is my genetics,
Right.
and all of those women are still incredibly beautiful.
Right.
But I will say for me, it is very important to choose a man that even when you are a burn victim or you do get disabled or you end up in a wheelchair, that man is still going to love you, and that
Right.
I'm going to still love that man regardless
Right.
of what he goes through. And so when you choose that man, like we said, a man of character in the beginning, I think you have a little bit less to worry about. And especially if he makes God number one, he has some sort of respect, discipline, and self-control instilled in him. And that's the biggest thing I can rely on. But there's always a risk
Sure.
in
No,
every
of course.
relationship.
Yeah,
for sure.
you're a fool if you don't think that obvious. No, that's great that you see it that way. I guess the thing for me is it's because the love part I completely agree with, right? The part that's trickier is the attraction,
Yeah.
right? Because you could love someone. Let's use the most extreme example, right? So my wife becomes a quadriplegic, I become a quadriplegic.
Yeah.
Sex is off the table,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so, like, if I ever became a quadriplegic, and my wife, stays with me, she wants a side piece. Like, I got no problem with that. You know what I'm saying? Like, in fact, to be honest, if I became a quadriplegic, I'd probably divorce her.
Oh my goodness.
Because I wouldn't want her to be stuck with me. Like, that's how
Mhm.
I would feel about it. Like, because I think if you love someone, you want them to be able to have. She probably wouldn't let me, but I think that's love, which is, hey, I want you to be able to have a full life. Because she's 32 now, and we talked about it. And look, I'm 58 years old. I have a 24, soon to be 25-year-old daughter. And when we first met, I actually told her, just so you know, there's zero chance I'm ever getting married, and there's zero chance I'm ever having kids.
Do you think you're going to marry this woman that you're with?
Oh, we're married already.
Okay.
Yeah, but when we met, I was like, I had a bad divorce, okay,
Yeah.
to say the least. And I literally thought there was a greater chance the earth would stop rotating on its axis and I would get married again. I thought she was going to fall off her chair when I asked her, hey, would you want to get married? She was like, have you lost your mind?
Yeah.
But ultimately, and I also said I wouldn't have children anymore. But what I came to, we was towards the end of last year. We'd already been married, a little bit over a year and a half, something like that. And I said, look, if you were to tell me that you don't believe your life would be complete unless you had children, I'm okay with it. And I won't just like, hey, your kid, good luck. I'll get behind it. Like, if that's, to me, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be freaking 80 when the kid's going to college, but whatever. Right.
Yeah.
And she thought about it, and it was funny. Ironically, her mom, who's got 4 kids, is like, you got a great thing, don't fuck it up. She's like, get a dog. So we got a dog.
Aw. So tell me a little bit more about your first marriage. How did you keep talking about this like ending so badly? I want to know.
Well,
a
it
little more.
wasn't that so we met when I was 25. We dated for 5 years, and then we were married for 5 years.
You guys were about the same age, right?
She was, about a year and a half younger than me. So pretty much the same age. And, we got engaged. I broke off the engagement when I was finishing business school, and she was actually just starting business school. And then we got re-engaged between her first and second year of business school. We got married right after she graduated. And I could get into the details about why I made the bad choice. Again, we're just badly suited to each other. In fact, a funny story, my daughter was like 8 or 9, and because we split when my daughter was 1 year old, and I'll come back to that in a minute. She never knew us together because we had already split. Most people don't have memories before they're 3, right? Yeah. So like when she would see our old wedding pictures or pictures of us, she'd be like, it's so weird seeing you and mom together. But she was 8 or 9. She said, I've never met 2 people more poorly suited for each other than you and mom. Wow. And she's not wrong.
Oh, wow.
At the end of the day, while emotionally choosing to get divorced was very difficult for me, intellectually, it was very easy. I mean, my wife didn't like me, let alone love me. And so I'm like, I'm not going to spend, the rest of my life with someone who doesn't like me.
What made her like not like you?
So this is the part that's tricky. Like, it wasn't like before we had my daughter. My daughter was planned. It wasn't like a surprise. We planned to have her, and we weren't like fighting or arguing or anything like that. And we talked about it. Like, hey, look, once we're married, like, we're still going to have date night. We're going to make it about us first and our kids second. Like, we discussed all those things. Then my daughter was born, and it was like a switch was flipped, and I didn't exist. I mean, I think if I'd, been struck by lightning, I don't know that she would have noticed, and so, and the thing that made the decision for me was my daughter was a pretty easy kid, slept through the night almost from the beginning. My daughter was maybe 3 or 4 months old, and my daughter was well behaved. She wasn't a colicky kid. And this one night, she just was inconsolable, breastfeeding her didn't help, rocking her, singing to her, nothing. And I could see my wife was really frustrated. And I was like, well, honey, I can see how frustrated you are. Let me try to help. She like rolls her eyes like, well, if I can't get her to calm down, you certainly can't. Whatever. So then I start rocking her, and 60 seconds later, she's out.
Dang.
My wife storms out of the room mad. And I was like, and then it just hit me like a ton of bricks, because I just had my head up my ass, to be honest. I'm like, wow, she's competing with me. Like, I thought we were a team, that we were doing this together. And so I waited a little bit, a couple of weeks, and then I sat her down and I was like, look, I said, I feel like you don't really like me very much. Like, why are you competing with me? Like, I thought we're a team. And I said, look, I'm really unhappy. And I said, if you say you love me and I'm miserable, how happy could you be? Yeah. And so we did some therapy, and the therapy just brought it into even sharper focus. I mean, I remember this one session, I know this is supposed to be me interviewing you, but whatever. I remember in this one therapy session, and I let her pick the therapist. It was a female. I figured, I don't want her to feel like I'm bullying her or anything like that. And my ex-wife's name is Chris. She's like, Chris goes on for like 5 minutes about, I don't listen, I'm not empathetic, and then, did all these terrible things. And after she's done, I said, Chris, there's only 2 possibilities I can think of. I said, you either think I'm that monster you just described, in which case you should be thrilled to be rid of me, or you're a bitch. And the therapist said, Dave's kind of got a point.
Oh my goodness, what?
And it went downhill from there. But but really it was, I just didn't want my daughter to grow up with 2 parents that didn't like each other. I liked her fine. She just didn't like me back. And it was weird. It wasn't that way before my daughter was born. And that's the part I think that's really hard to predict. How do you know how you're going to be as a person when you're responsible for a child, when you've never had a child before? I just think that it's always a little bit of a crapshoot.
So would you recommend somebody getting into a relationship with someone who already has a child?
So I'll say this. I think that if you were to ask my wife, she would tell you that because she has an older brother, and she saw this with her brother as well, that for a man, that a guy doesn't really become a man until he's raised a child. And I think there's some truth to that. I mean, I don't think I was a bad guy before, but my daughter absolutely made me a better human being. Of that, there is no doubt. I don't think my wife would love me nearly like she does, but for the fact that the kind of father that I am too, like she sees the kind of father that I am, and they're very close, thank God. Yeah, and they're much closer in age than my wife and I. They're 7.5 years apart, something like that. Okay.
And you said your ex-wife too, she didn't want you to like, or she didn't want your daughter to like you.
So she went out of her way. So she moved. She basically moved to Chicago. She basically said, she was going to
with the daughter.
Yeah, with our daughter, without my approval. I mean, we were separated and we were getting divorced, and she basically said, hey, I'm going to go visit a friend of mine in Chicago. Is it okay if I date Tyler? It's my daughter. I said, of course. And then she called me like a week later. Yeah, I'm not coming back, and tough shit. So yeah. So anyway, I ended up having a long distance relationship with my daughter for about 2.5 years, and I would fly there every 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah. every third trip, I'd buy 3 plane tickets. I'd fly to Chicago, fly back to New York, fly back to Chicago to drop her off, and fly back again, so she could spend time with my family. And then when my daughter was about 3, I guess, I still remember this. We were walking in Central Park, make me emotional. And she's like, Daddy, she's like, why do you live in New York and not in Chicago with me and Mom? Is it because you don't love me? And so I basically told everyone the next day that I wanted to get a job in Chicago and I'd take anything. And 3 months later, I had a job in Chicago and I moved to Chicago. And then a year after I moved to Chicago, my ex-wife threatened to move back to St. Louis, and I had to get. The number of times I've been in and out of courtrooms over the last, for the first 18 years of my daughter's life, I can't even count. She made it very, very difficult. So
there's actually a lot of situations where I have heard, especially talking to men in the barbershop, where, statistics only say, oh, these fathers aren't present or whatever the case may be. But there's actually a lot of times where I've noticed the woman or the mother of the child is actually the one keeping the father away from the child.
She did everything humanly possible. Everything. I mean, to the point, the part that was so, I genuinely, I remember asking my mom about this. I said, Mom, I don't understand. I said, I'm the best ex-husband you could have. Every time she blinks, I'm writing a check, whatever she wants. And, I said, I want to be as involved in my daughter's life as humanly possible. And my mom said to me, she's like, well, even though you said it nicely, you told her you didn't want to be with her anymore. So she's got 2 options. She can, either think you're a great guy that decided that she wasn't enough for you, or you're an asshole and it's your fault. Guess which one she's going to pick?
No accountability.
Yeah, no accountability, exactly. But the part that blew me away was she would say with a straight face, and I think she believed it, that my daughter would be way better off if I wasn't in her life. I mean, she said that to me. She would tell anyone who would listen. And what eventually happened was once my daughter was about 6 or 7, she would start saying stuff about me, and my daughter would be like, Daddy's not like that. Wow. Don't say that about Daddy. And once it started to affect her relationship negatively with my daughter, she shut up. Yeah. And from that point forward, it was a lot easier. Okay. So, but yeah, it's just people, it's unfortunate that when people, I hate to generalize from a gender standpoint, but I do think it's a little bit more true that when a woman is rejected, it can often be completely scorched earth. Like,
I guarantee
they will do anything to the point. Like, to me, I went the other way. Like, I would never say bad stuff about my ex-wife to my daughter ever, and not in front of her, and certainly not to her. And I would go the opposite way. If there was anything positive I could find to say, I would. I had this thing when I would, my daughter used to like me to, instead of reading her stories, my daughter would say, Daddy, can you make one? She would want me to make stories up. So I would make stories. I would, just whatever we did that day. But I would always I would work her mom into the story. And I went out of my way. And, I think that that's part of the reason my daughter and I are so close now is because I tried to take the high ground. Yeah. So.
Speaking of kind of just like the successful man, I had a question spark in my mind.
Sure.
When it does come from a successful relationship dealing with a lot of these women out here, do you recommend a man getting a prenup?
Yeah, I have a prenup.
Okay.
So when but the way I framed it, and this was not a manipulation. It was when I asked my then girlfriend, and surprised her, like, hey, would you want to get married? I said, look, the two most important people in the world to me are you and my daughter. So I want to make sure that, because I told her, I said, look, I want, because you don't work, because I'm telling you not to work, not telling you, I'm saying you don't have to work. I didn't tell her not to, it was her choice. That I don't want you to feel, and again, I think for a guy who's older, it's much easier to start over. For a woman, it's much, much harder. When we met, like I said, she was 23. When we got married, she was 30. And I'm like, I don't want her to, let's say we were to split up, even if it was her choice, when she's 40, she'd be like, well, I haven't been working for 10 years and, so on and so forth. I said, so I want you to be comfortable that you're taken care of. And I need to be comfortable that my daughter's taken care of. Yeah. And so we basically agreed to that. And I even said, even if it's you dumping me, this is how much you'll walk away from the relationship with. It's 7 figures, right? So she was like, so she felt like not only was our prenup protecting me, but it was also protecting her.
Okay. That's what's up.
So yeah, so I do think, and I think a woman who wouldn't be willing to sign a prenup, I think that tells you a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, you're planning for it to. And I said, no. And again, I think that the prenup needs to be fair, right?
So I'm not exactly educated on how prenups work.
Sure.
So educate me a little bit. Is it like whatever? From my understanding, it's like whatever. When we sign it, it's kind of just like everything that I have, I keep, and everything that you.
A prenup is a completely flexible contract. It could say anything.
Okay.
It could be like, in some cases, it could be, hey, any assets, because in what happens is the law is based on state if there's no prenup. So like if you're in California as a guy, you're fucked. Like if you get married without a prenup, even with a prenup, it's hard. But without a prenup, you're totally screwed. In other states, it's different. In most states, whatever you had before the relationship is yours after the relationship ends. And whatever you accumulated during the relationship is split, generally 50-50, not always. But if you have a prenup, it could be whatever you want. Yeah. So in my case, it was like, you're going to walk away with, this percent or this dollars, no matter what. Okay. So, and then again, you can have clauses. Like I remember when Michael Douglas married Catherine Zeta-Jones, if he's unfaithful, she gets like everything. and she basically like, look, you're a total womanizer. The only way I'm marrying you is if the cost of you cheating is so high that you won't do it. So basically, so you can have a prenup be anything.
Wow, that's actually very crazy.
Yeah.
Wow, nice to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, you can make it any way you want to. And again, the state law generally can mess with it a little bit. But the problem is, even with a prenup, once you have children, it's a little bit, all bets are off, again, depending on the state. Because what can happen is it'd be like, oh, it's not for me, it's for the child. It's a lifestyle to which the child's become accustomed, and he's become accustomed to 12 Ferraris and 9 Lamborghinis and 12 Rolls Royces, right? Yeah. And 6 summer homes in France and Italy and whatever. so that's where they, and that's why you see people that are the more, sort of cutthroat gold diggers. The first thing they do is have a kid.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. But look, at the end of the day, my experience is women that have bad intentions are not that intelligent. And so if you just pay attention, like you said, just be quiet and let them talk. Yeah. And they'll give them enough rope to hang themselves. I mean, before I met my wife, I was single and I dated a lot of women. I've been on more than 1,000 first dates. Wow,
that's a lot.
And I would say, and that
that's
was in
more
like
than me.
Yeah, I've been on more than 1,000 first dates in probably like a 5-year window.
Wow,
a lot of first dates. That's a lot.
That's like almost like a date every day or every other day.
Not quite, but it's up there. It's up there. People think I'm exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating. Wow. I used to be a dating coach, believe it or not, years ago. I just did it on the side for fun. Okay. And again, I think it's really easy to tell when someone's got bad intentions. I don't think it's hard to tell at all. I think you just have to pay attention and not be blinded by beauty. Yeah. Which is hard for a lot of men. Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, I think there's this, I see her on Twitter, I think she's Persian or Middle Eastern, attractive.
Oh, Sadia.
Yeah, I think that's right. And she basically says, like, as a man, you should never choose a woman who's not really attracted to you. And that's not to say she can't be much better looking than you. My wife is much better looking than me. But we've been together 9 years. Like, you can't fake attraction for 9 years. Yeah. So it's like, it's not even having sex necessarily. It's, are they holding your hand? Are they running their fingers through your hair? Yeah. Are they, giving you a hot oil massage and running your bath and, all the stuff that someone who's attracted to you. My wife comes in to my office. I have an office at home. She comes to my office just to sniff me. Like, you just come in and sniff me and then she'll leave.
I love that. I love that.
So anyway, well, Sapphire, I have to say, this has been so much fun. Yeah. I've really enjoyed it. I appreciate you taking some time and being so open.
Yeah, thank you.
So, and maybe we'll do what we said. Maybe have my wife and I do a podcast with you.
Yeah, I would absolutely love that.